Good day, and welcome to episode Methot.
Wheeling and dealing, will he get a chance? Yes, he will! Rebound! Scores! Methot!
Of the Unparalleled Success Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Woods. I am a radio broadcasting student at Algonquin College. My guest today will be Nathan MacCallum. Nathan is a friend of mine from back home in Gananoque, Ontario. We used to work together at Tim Hortons, and we've attended a handful of Sens games with each other over the years and watched a few more on television. Nathan and I are going to spend some time talking about the in-game experience at the Canadian Tire Centre. We're going to go over some rules that we each came up with to make the NHL better. Some of them are funny, some of them are a little bit more serious. And as always, we're going to relive some Sens nostalgia, where I ask him his favorite Sens goal of all time, his favorite Sens game of all time, and if he has ever met any NHL players or celebrities, and whether or not he has a favorite encounter with them. How's it going, Nathan?
Very good, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So we've got some games to play today because we can only talk about how bad the Sens are so much. So we've got to spread out and diversify ourselves. So the first game that we're going to do is a Sens in-game experience plus minus. We're just going to talk about some things going on at the Canadian Tire Centre. And if you are a fan, then you're going to give it a plus. And if you don't like it, then you can give it a minus. Sound good?
That sounds good.
All right, so the first item we've got is the commute to the Canadian Tire Centre.
Well, for me, Ryan, this would be something that I would say is a plus. I'd give it a plus just based on, while the arena is where it's at right now in Canada, for myself coming from Gananoque, it avoids the trip through the city, unlike a lot of other arenas in the league. And for me, that's a big difference between going up to Scotiabank Arena versus going to the Canadian Tire Centre, and that's where I would give it a plus over other teams.
Moving on to the next topic, we've got parking.
For parking, this was a tough one. I went with just a slight plus because there's some sections that I've found are easier to get out from and provide a good exit for the long drive back home to Gananoque. I definitely feel like I've got a favorite lot at this point that I try to get to. But there's always a wait to get in and out of the lots, but I feel like that's pretty standard for any big venue. And
I've always thought that once they move the arena downtown, once they do, that's a big if, but there's not going to be any parking there anyway. It's LeBreton Flats. Anybody that's been to Blues Fest knows there's no parking. And after the Red Hot Chili Peppers concert a few years ago at Blues Fest, it took hours just to get on a bus and get out of there because there was like 50,000 people there. So for a game with like 20,000 fans is what Ottawa would be hoping would be a positive outcome, it's still going to be like the same amount of time that it takes you to get out of the parking lot in Canada, which is half an hour, 45 minutes just to catch a bus back to wherever you have to park downtown Ottawa. So for me, I don't understand why the parking is an issue as is, especially right now when there's only 10,000 people going to the game. It's a breeze. The parking area you showed me with the hill there, it's one of the farthest lots from the building, but you get out of there within 5 minutes as it is right now, so you gotta love that.
Yeah. Lots of space right now.
Do you have any thoughts on the security going into the game?
For me, I said that the security I'd put as a plus because while I've also never really had any issues with the security, I went up to the game with a friend one time, and he had an interesting piece of jewelry that was a chain with a padlock around his neck, and he didn't have the key to the padlock with him. And so when he went through the detectors, obviously it went off because he's wearing a piece of metal. And some of the security were worried that he could use it as a weapon, but one of the nice men came by and told him that as he would have to behead himself in order to use it as a weapon, or he'd be allowed inside. So I give them a plus because they seem like nice people, and they seemed at least smart enough to figure that out.
That's actually a perfect example of why I agree, because they actually take the time to identify any potential threats, and that's exactly what you want in a venue with security, is they take the time. And I would rather them do that and never have any problems than to say,
Yep.
get on through there and, hope for the best.
Absolutely.
Next item on the list is the Sen store. Before we get into a sort of the Price is Right sort of game I've got figured out with some very interesting items available for sale in the Sen store, general thoughts first on the Sen store. Is that a plus or a minus?
I feel like it's a little expensive, but overall it's a bit of a plus. I'd be lying if I said that I don't usually pick something up when I'm up at a game, so I can't really say it's a minus when I'm spending all my money there.
Yeah, I've spent a few hundred. That'd be quite generous. Maybe we're into the thousands now in dollars that I've spent at the Sen store over the years. But
That sounds about right.
so one of the first items we've got from the Sen store, they've got Ottawa Senators baby onesies. What are your thoughts on that product?
Oh, good for the kids. You can't go wrong with starting them out young. That's a plus for me. If I had a child, they'd be wearing a onesie.
Oh, I don't know about.
Onesie.
Could be a potential choking hazard, and why would you want to influence your newborn to cheer for the Ottawa Senators? That seems pretty harsh.
That's a good point.
Anyway, over under for the price on Ottawa Senators baby onesies. Do you have it over or under $20?
Oh, I'm definitely going to take the over on that based on some of the prices.
Yeah, you've got that right. It's usually $30, but right now, and right now only, you can get it on sale for a very reasonable $7.
Wow.
And
Might have to pick that up and store it away.
yeah, for the future MacCallum generations to come. All right, moving on to number 2. Infant Ottawa Senators EK65 jersey.
Oh, as someone who picked one up when they went on clearance, I'd give it a plus, but a minus for the fact that they, I don't know, that they're there. They traded the player. I don't really know how else to put that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you picked up on it or not, but it's specifically for infants, so it's like a size 0.
Oh, that's my mistake. I'd say a plus for the same reasons as the onesie. Start them young.
Mm-hmm. Now, the only problem with this is that it's only going to last them for maybe 18 months, and then it's never going to fit them again because, those babies, they don't stop growing, and the price for these, are you going to give it over or under $50?
Based on the fact that it's a Carlson, I'm going to go with the under on this one, actually.
Oh, it's on sale for $20 right now, but usually they go for $60, and for a jersey for an infant who's less than 24 months old, $60 for that jersey, it's just not gonna happen.
Not the bang for your buck that you want.
Mm-hmm. Of course, they've also got men's Ottawa Senators underwear.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. So for a cold day on the pond, playing some pondy, you want to represent the boys. Now it's just one pair, and it's packaged in a puck, so you'd think that it wouldn't be too expensive. Are you going over or under $8?
I think I'm going to go with the under.
Yeah.
It should be under $8.
No, it's $12 for one pair of underwear. Next up, we've got Ottawa Senators drumsticks, this would be a great item for anybody that wants to wear a chain and a lock to a hockey game. So it's just the one pair of drumsticks, nothing special about them. How much do you think those cost?
Well, I was browsing the Senators store just a few, maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago before we started.
You were cheating.
I did see these. But I can't remember how much they were. I'm going to say $15.
They were $36.
Oh, I'm way off.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You hate to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got lots of odd items. They had Ottawa Senators 2-piece steak carving set for $60. Ottawa Senators 5-piece kitchen knife set for $47. Lots of sharp objects for the Sen store.
Lots of hazards.
A couple of very interesting items I didn't know they had. This is in the collectibles section. They had a Mike Hoffman autographed NHL puck from his NHL debut. It was a game puck. How much do you think that went for?
Autographed game puck. I'm going to say $70, $70 to $80, somewhere in there.
It's actually a fairly reasonable $56.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
then
not bad at all.
no, yeah, that'd be a good Christmas gift for a diehard Sens fan.
Yeah.
And then finally, we've got the autographed hat from Mike Hoffman's first NHL hat trick. So some fan donated a hat to the NHL Sens store that is autographed by Mike Hoffman that they tossed on the ice for his first career hat trick. Guess how much that's listed at?
I'd say it should be maybe a cool $50.
$100 for somebody's generously donated hat.
A donated hat for a former player's hat trick.
That was a fun game. Glad to look at the interesting items they've got for sale in the Sens store. Now back to the concourse. If you're hungry, you got to get a pregame or an intermission meal. Are you going to Burger Shack?
I can't say that I've been, and I can't say that I'll likely be attending anytime soon. More of a Smokes Patinery man myself.
Okay, so you're giving the Smokes Poutineery a big plus, but the Burger Shack, is that bad enough to get a minus from you, or you wouldn't know?
The Burger Shack, I'm going to give it a solid neutral, solid 0 here.
You're going to go with a solid 2018 Nate Thompson. Not a plus, not a minus, but right in the middle.
Absolutely.
That's good. Are you a fan of the very notable Golden Palace egg rolls?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not. I've only had them once, but they didn't entice me to return. I found they were a little too greasy for my liking. They just didn't get the job done. I was expecting a lot more for the hype that I had heard around them.
I even considered trying them at last Thursday's game, the big overtime win against LA. And then I saw the picture on the menu board, and it looked like a burnt hockey puck. I wasn't having it.
They do not look like egg rolls. Growing up in an Asian household, eating and making spring rolls and egg rolls, that doesn't look like egg rolls.
So the Unparalleled Success podcast has determined the Golden Palace egg rolls are highly overrated, and they do not cut the mustard. All right,
Gotta go with a minus on that.
Yeah, this next one is a personal favorite of mine. Probably the best part of the in-game experience at the Canadian Tire Center. What are your thoughts on my friend Spartacat?
Oh, Sparty's a big plus. Big plus. He's good with the kids, and one of the things that I found is really important. He'll always respond in some form if you say something to him or near him. He'll look right over and he'll do something. It does add to the in-game experience for sure. I'm a fan.
Absolutely, me as well. When I was younger, I loved Spartacat. Still do. Always take the time to give him a high five or a fist bump when the Sens are down by 6 goals in the third period. Next up on the list, we've got the Bell phone charging station.
This one's got to be another neutral for me. I've never actually used it.
It's a big plus for me. It comes in clutch in the winter when the phone battery doesn't last, and you can't bring your phone charger into well, you can actually. You just don't want to because it takes up too much pocket space, and you're not allowed to bring in any bags. So go to the Bell phone charging station and socialize with some other people who suffer from being a fan of the Ottawa Senators. It's a big plus for me. Now we've got the entertainment portion during the game in the upper or the lower bowl, wherever your seating preference is. How do you like the national anthem singers that they've had over the past few years?
I kind of debated on this a bit because I was a big fan of Mr. Slewage there, but I would go with positive. They've brought in some talented people, and the people that they brought in have done a fine job. So I'm gonna go with a plus on that.
Yeah, I was pretty upset when they got rid of Lyndon Slewage because I used to believe that every NHL team should have an anthem singer to identify with. Like the Philadelphia Flyers, they always have Kate Smith on the Jumbotron in the playoffs, and they've got Lauren Hart now. And it's just sort of part of the team identity. But moving on from that, the singers they have now have been good, as you said. So I'll give it a pass, like maybe a +1.
Okay. Yeah.
Now we've got some new intermission entertainment over the past few years that was really lacking for a while, but they've really upped their game. Are you a big DJ Prosper fan?
Oh, absolutely. He gets the crowd going, which I think is pretty important for intermission entertainment. Does a good job, plays good music. I can't complain.
Right on. What do you think of the new Fan Boney?
I haven't been to a game personally to see it, but it's just a minus based on the, I don't think anyone asked for it, and I don't think anyone is too big of a fan. So it's just got to be a minus for me.
Racing Prime Ministers.
This was one where I feel I wouldn't enjoy it if I was at games more frequently, but due to the commute and other events going on in life, I'm not at too many games in a year, so I enjoy it when I see it.
So you think maybe if you were a fan that went to more games, it would get on your nerves, and perhaps that they should consider some other options just to have a variety of intermission entertainment?
I think that would be more ideal.
The air guitar cam.
Some people seem to get really into it. It's fun to watch, but I'm gonna have to go with a slight minus just because I'd probably never do it.
Bobby Ryan's All Stars.
It's a little sad with that guy being scratched right now, but I'll give it a plus just for the fact that he's doing something good with that big contract we handed out to him.
Yeah, I love what he does for the kids in the community. Even when he's scratched, he's one of my favorite players. I would be very sad if they traded him before the contract's up. We've already come so far. We may as well get over the last 3 seasons, including this one on the contract. The only downside that this one has for me is they used to play Smash Mouth's All-Star during the segment, and they no longer do, which I think is unacceptable.
Oof.
I'm a big Smash Mouth guy.
That's fair. I didn't even realize they got rid of it, but that probably tells you about where I am on Smash Mouth.
Next up on the agenda, the goal horn.
Oh, it's an easy plus. It's good. Like It's got its own sound to it. It's iconic. I know what the Sens goal horn sounds like, and I think that's really what you want. You want it to be a distinct sound.
Yeah, when people from other fan bases complain about it, you know you've got something good going.
Yep.
In arena music.
I'd say it's generally fine. There's a good mix of everything. There's a little bit in there for everyone. And on that tune, I'm a big fan of song 2 by Blur, being the goal horn, being the music that plays after we score. So I'd give it a plus.
Do you ever get annoyed when they play some older songs that maybe don't fit the mold anymore, like Cotton Eye Joe or Outkast's Hey Ya?
Cotton Eye Joe was the only one that I could think of where I don't enjoy it when they put it on.
Even when they went on that run in 2015 and every time they were trailing in the third period, they would play it and the boys would come back, you're still not feeling the vibes?
If it's for the good of the team in an event like that, then it was passable, but it doesn't do it for me, I'll be honest with you.
Okay. Overall atmosphere in the games?
This is one where I feel like that can really depend on where you are in the arena. Just because there's a lot of casual fans up in the 300s. I've sat near people who are on their phones while the puck's in play, taking a phone call, and people that are telling the people around them a couple facts that aren't actually too accurate. But I think I found the closer you are to the ice, the more the people around you are also engaged, and I think that is something that really helped with the atmosphere and the experience in the game. So I'll give this plus.
Mm-hmm. Overall experience?
I'd say I have to go with a general plus because I've given mostly pluses out for most of the categories here. I find it's enjoyable the way it is right now, but I'm excited if they eventually, hopefully, move downtown to see what the new game day experience is going to be.
There's always something to look forward to in the future. Is there anything you wanted to add from the in-game experience that you thought I may have missed?
There was one item, actually. I thought about the arena Wi-Fi through Club Bell, and I think there's a couple other networks in the arena. I've had hit and miss with connecting it to it. You see some people in the arena who seem to know what the passwords are, but regardless, it's a little slow.
Especially this year, I find that I end up having to use my data, and my data doesn't even work in the arena because it's in the middle of nowhere. So the Wi-Fi is a minus, unfortunately.
That's fair.
Next up, we have another game that I came up with all by myself with no help from anybody at all. Humble brag. It's going to be the NHL rules. You would change, create, or veto. I've came up with 5 rules that I would alter, create, and I asked Nathan to do the same, so he's come up with 5. We're going to take turns revealing our rules and telling each other how stupid they are.
Sounds good.
All right. Did you want to go first, Nathan?
Sure. I'll take the first one. The first rule that came to mind as soon as you posed the question was the offside reviews with the coach's challenge. I find a lot of the time it just has nothing to do with the actual play, and it's such a game of inches. You look at the name of the player's not coming to me off the top of my head, but there was one in I believe it was the Bruins and Habs, where the puck was in the player's legs, and it was just it had so little to do with the actual play and the actual goal that I can't get behind having to watch the refs look at an iPad for 10 minutes to determine if it's a goal or not.
I can't disagree with that one. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you how stupid that one is. You probably will be able to tell me how stupid my first rule is, but I actually feel very strongly about it. My rule, a few years ago, they implemented a rule where all rookie players had to wear visors to phase out all of the players in the league that did not wear visors. My first rule is all rookie players must wear full cages. What are your thoughts on this one?
That's a tough one because I can see the I don't want to say the appeal because I don't think there's quite as much appeal. But I don't know how much the players would enjoy that, but I can see the appeal from a safety perspective for sure. You know, you see so many players getting punched in the faces. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough call. I think you'd have to ask a player's opinion on that.
The biggest part of this rule for me is I have never once, and I've watched thousands of hockey games, I have not missed more than a handful of Sens games since 2008. I have never once seen a visor prevent an injury.
That's fair. I think I have a hard time thinking of any instances of that.
And I have a hard time imagining one ever doing the job anyway. Anyway, moving on. What's your number 2 rule?
The number 2 that I've got here is just an update to the draft lottery. I'm not too keen on giving every team that misses the playoffs a shot at a lottery pick. I'd kind of want to whittle that down to top 5 or maybe top 10, rather bottom 5 or bottom 10 teams in the league that would have some sort of odds at the first overall pick or the top 3.
I think a lot of people will agree with you on that one. For me, I remember a few years ago when Ottawa was generally, for the majority of that 10-year span from 2008 to 2017, they were always a bubble playoff team. So I sort of like the idea of missing the playoffs by a few points. You still have a chance to turn the team around. It gives everybody something to look forward to at the end of the season. And I think that in terms of the idea of the rule was to prevent teams from tanking. And I think that has been effective so far because they're like last year, in January, we saw it. St. Louis was in last place, but they were still close enough that they finished 1 point away from winning the Central Division and went on to win the Stanley Cup. So,
right, that's true.
My second rule is, and this is a very innovative one. I've never heard anybody suggest this rule before, but in terms of getting offense up, when a penalty is called, you must keep the 4 remaining players on the ice that were there at the time of the penalty. If you're being penalized, why should you get to put out your 4 most defensively responsible players? You can make a line change after the first whistle, but for like the opening shift of the power play, you should have the 4 remaining players on the ice.
That's an interesting one. I'll be honest with you, I never even thought of something like that. And it would open up, I think, maybe even more scoring because you get players on the ice at the start of the penalty kill that wouldn't normally be there, which I think would be it'd be interesting to watch.
The Unparalleled Success podcast, always about innovation. What's your next one?
The next one that I've got here is another bit of a more general rule, but one of the things that came to mind was an update to the current playoff format. Like I think the idea of all the rivalry matchups is cool, but it gives odd matchups. Like I love seeing the Leafs lose, but I feel like the general point that a lot of people make as an argument is just that the really good teams seem to play each other very early on in the playoffs.
That's fair, especially last year. Winnipeg may have been a favorite to go on a deep playoff run, but they ultimately lose to St. Louis, and St. Louis goes on to win the Cup. And then, of course, Toronto losing to Boston every year in the first round, and Boston goes on to lose in the Cup finals. So that's a good representation of the good teams bowing out in the early rounds. So did you have a proposal for what would you like to see in place of that?
I enjoyed more of the previous format that we had before this, with the three division leaders being at the top, and then the rest just kind of filling out. I think it made for some interesting matchups that you wouldn't have seen before, and it generally was a best on best, save for weaker divisions.
Yeah, that's the only problem I have with this one, is that like 1 year Florida won a division with 91 points and got to play the 6th seed as a result of it. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing maybe just 1 through 8 straight through without any advantages for winning the division.
That's fair. That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right, my fourth rule is this one has been suggested by many people before, but I still like it. Get rid of the trapezoid. There's so many goalies that like to go out and play the puck, and it's always hilarious when they get caught out of their crease and a goal ends up in the back of their net and they're trapped in the corner or trapped behind the net. So I think if you add that extra 2/3 of the ice behind the net, I think we'll see a lot more misplays and create some more offense.
I'd agree with that. That was a rule that I had in mind. It's not one that I ended up putting in my top 5 here, but that was a rule that I thought was one that could use a little change.
Right on. What's your next one?
It's a bit more of a joke rule, I guess. I'm not sure how feasible it would be, but I thought it might be a little fun to see, similar to how they do it in lacrosse. The goalie actually go to the penalty box if they take a penalty, and you have the backup goalie play only for the power play. And then at the next whistle, I would assume you would have you could have the starter come back and have the backup go back to the bench.
I like that. I've heard some arguments that it would take too much time, but really, how long is it going to take for an NHL goalie to skate from their crease to the penalty box? Like 10 seconds? Yeah. So I'm in favor of that. And now I believe this is the final rule. I'm losing track of my own show, but is that where we're at?
I've got one more after this, actually.
Okay. Oh, and that means I've got 2. I'm dumb. All right. Rule number 4. All goals that are kicked in, high sticked in, should be allowed. And the reason I say that is more goals, obviously, and it would be entertaining as heck to see like players, like how many high skill plays we would see with a player batting a puck out of midair. And the risk with that being involved is you're getting players hit in the head with the puck. Well, you've still got to be in control of your stick. You can't be taking a whack at somebody's head with your stick, but I just think it would be entertaining to see players like Sidney Crosby, who have such great hand-eye coordination, to be able to pull off these goals without any restrictions.
Yep, and I think a change like that kind of raises the skill bar a little bit. You can get players making different kind of plays that normally wouldn't result in the goal.
And a potential argument against that one would be that players might like try and carry the puck on their stick like the lacrosse style and like gut through players. So maybe like in addition to that, like create a rule like there's no carrying the puck on your stick while skating. So you could just limits it to batting pucks out of the air into the net. All right. What's your final rule that you would like to change?
My final rule, again, was a bit of I don't want to say a joke rule, but something that I'm not sure, again, how feasible it would be, but I think it would at least be interesting. And it was the idea of not stopping at 5-on-3 essentially if there are 2 penalties. If another player takes a penalty, going down to 5-on-2 and so on. I mean, obviously you couldn't have all the players go off the ice, but I think it might be interesting to see like a 3-man advantage or something just to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Then perhaps the Sens could finally score on the power play, is what you're saying.
That's a part of the boost of that rule there.
I was actually thinking the other day when watching a 3-on-3 overtime game is that when a team is on the penalty in overtime, if they were to be two men down, it would be a 5-on-3. So if you have like 30 seconds left in the overtime and you're down 1 man, what's to stop you from grabbing a hold of every player on the other team? Because you can only go down to 5-on-3.
Right.
So you're just going to kill the clock off. So I think that would be interesting in certain scenarios to have like a 5-on-2 power play. I like that rule. And my final rule is the All-Star game sucks right now. So the only All-Star game that matters in sports is the MLB because it determines home field in the World Series.
Right.
Nobody cares about a 3-on-3 tournament with John Scott as a captain. I'm sorry. Great moment the once, but has anybody said anything about the NHL All-Star game since that year?
That's fair. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I've watched it since the John Scott games.
So either get rid of the All-Star game or make it matter, and $1 million to the winning team doesn't matter. They all already have $1 million for the MVP and for the split checks for the tournament winners. So you know what does matter? Home field in the home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup final, I think would at least make it somewhat watchable. And if you went back to the West versus East format, because when I was 10 years old in 2009 and that was the setup that they had, I actually looked forward to it. So
I'd agree with that.
All right. Well, thank you for your rules. I enjoyed that. Always fun to get creative.
Yeah.
Next topic. What are your thoughts on the current season for the Sens so far? We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Ryan, it's a little interesting because when I thought about this last night, I wrote down that I thought the team had looked a little better than I expected recently, and then I watched that Senators-Hurricanes game, the 8-2 loss there, and it kind of really reaffirmed my beliefs that I really want that top pick, and I think we're going to come close, or we're going to be in that mix, in the good odds on the draft lottery this year.
Do you have any favorite prospects on the team currently?
Down in Belleville, I'm a huge fan of Vitaly Abramov. He's a nice young man, great goal scorer, a little small, but he works very hard. I definitely would be the prospect that I'm most excited about and feel like I'm rooting for.
Are you keeping your eye on the Shark Tank?
I am for the most part. I feel like it's not going to last, but knowing how bad Martin Jones is, I think it's entirely possible that they finish in the bottom 10 and really gift us a good pick here.
And if they even miss the playoffs by a few points, that would be pretty cool if we had an opportunity to have 2 potential lottery picks, even if the percentage chance of us winning isn't even the best. But yeah, Martin Jones' save percentage is .888 right now. So it's looking pretty good if you're a Sens fan. Moving on to the final 5 questions, I always like to ask my guests a bit of take a look back at some nostalgic Sens moments from over the years. Do you have any favorite under-the-radar players of all time who have played for the Ottawa Senators?
I'm not sure how under the radar he might be due to a certain scandal last year, but I'm going to go with Chris Weidman on this. I really enjoyed his. He did a couple locker room interviews a few years back, and I enjoyed his comedic style, I guess you could say. And he always seemed just a little underappreciated as a really good third pairing defenseman. So he's definitely someone that I enjoyed to watch, and I liked seeing him off the ice as well.
Do you have any favorite players who have never played or have never been drafted, like basically never involved in the Senators organization?
It's funny. A few years ago, I would have gone with John Tavares off the top of my head, but that's switched in recent years after he joined the blue team. So I'm going to go with Brock Besser. He's a good player, and I found he's very likable. I ended up watching just like a mini documentary series about him and his life growing up, and he seems like a really good guy off the ice. He's one of the few players that's not on the Sens where I would wear his jersey.
He took a young lady to prom last year. They did a special on it on Hockey Night in Canada. So he's done great community work. I had him high on the draft list in 2015. I wouldn't have been upset if they had have picked him instead of Colin White when they did. I really liked what he did for his amateur hockey career, and he's definitely carried that over into the NHL. And he's absolutely right up there on my list of favorite NHLers as well. Do you get the chance to stay up and watch too many Canucks games right now?
Not at the moment, but they're definitely a team that I'm following off to the side, we'll say. Just because he's likable, and they're also they've got a lot of very good players right now.
All right, back to the Ottawa Senators. Do you have a favorite Sens goal of all time?
I went a bit back and forth on this, but I'm going to go with Bobby Ryan's overtime winner in Game 1 of our series against Pittsburgh.
Justin Schultz pinching. There's a chance for Bobby Ryan trying to pull away. Ryan by himself. He scores! What a rush. A breakaway goal for Bobby Ryan, and Ottawa wins Game 1.
I loved the rush, seeing him speed up all of a sudden. It was a nice goal, and I remember at the time feeling like it proved that we could really we could hang with the Penguins even if we ended up losing. And I've always been a fan of Bobby.
And you said you were going back and forth on that one. Did you have a close second that came to mind?
There was a couple other ones, just all from that playoff run. I could have gone, I feel like, with any of Ryan's goals, and MacArthur's overtime winner against the Bruins was another one that I definitely thought of right away.
Carlson ready, doesn't shoot it here. A pass to the side of the net, score! Ottawa wins the game. Ottawa Senators win the series.
Do you have a favorite Sens game of all time that you either watched on TV or even in person?
I went a little basic on this one, I guess you could say. The 6-1 Sens Habs. I believe it was Game 3 in 2013.
Into the back of the net. Now we're going to have a war here in the center ice zone.
Holy cow! You are telling me. White is getting it left and right from the big defenseman, Jared Cowan. With the puck again at the blue line. Might get it again. The score comes from in front of the net. Albertson was coming up behind it. And it's a hat trick for the young guy.
It's just a personal favorite of mine. I've got a lot of memories of watching the game itself. Pajot's hat trick, the line brawl, and everything was just. It's one that you certainly wouldn't forget.
And have you ever met any NHL players or celebrities, or do you have any favorite stories from an encounter with one of them?
met a few players through FanFest and hometown tours. Definitely my favorite encounter was with Alex Burrows at Senators FanFest a few years ago. Met him, very funny, very nice. The girl I was with at the time, she and I went and got our stuff signed by him and Ryan Dzingel, and he asked us what our plans were for later, and if we were going to cuddle on the couch. And I always got a kick out of that, and it's definitely it was a very memorable experience for sure.
I wasn't sure if you were going to choose to tell that story or not, but I'm glad you did.
Very close to the heart.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Unparalleled Success Podcast for episode Methot. And we'll look forward to maybe having you back sometime.
Thanks very much for having me, Ryan. I'd love to come back.
I would like to once again thank Nathan MacCallum very much for joining the Unparalleled Success Podcast today. You can give Nathan a follow on Twitter at MacCallum Nathan. That's MacCallum Nathan. He likes to tweet about the Sens on there. Thanks for him joining the podcast today. Had a great conversation about the Ottawa Senators. Right now, I'm going to go and study for a radio programming midterm exam. Thank you all for tuning in and giving a listen to episode Methot.